In a desperate bid to save his own life, the king abandons his nation and all his people, only to thrust his 18-year-old son onto the throne as a sacrificial pawn against the invading enemy. This prince, scorned by his own father since childhood, finds himself a puppet ruler. His only protectors a band of mercenaries, men paid to die in the place of others. This is a story of betrayal, growth, and redemption. The tale of a boy forsaken by the world, who rises to true kingship surrounded by a band of outcasts, willing to die for coin. The year is 1592 on the borderlands of Joseon. A man named To Woo moves through the tall grass. He is a veteran of the Daeripgun. The Daeripgun, where the rich pay the poor to serve in their stead. These people live under others' names and die under others' names. They are a group of identityless consumables of war. This time, To Woo leads a terrified rookie on an ambush against the Japanese invaders. To Woo tells him the only thing truly worth fearing isn't death. It's dying like his father did, before his term in the substitute army was up, leaving his brothers to suffer the same fate. To steal the boy's nerves, To Woo hands him a flask of what he calls Yurkin blood, claiming it will make him invincible to blades. With a command, the ambush begins. The Daeripgun charge like tigers, hurling themselves into the enemy ranks. The battlefield is a storm of steel and flesh, men falling with every heartbeat. To Woo fights with brutal skill, leading from the front, but the horrors of war surpass anything imaginable. After the battle, a surviving enemy soldier, captured and trembling, claims he is Korean, nothing more than a royal servant who tended the king's fires. To Woo's comrade urges the man to join them, saying, "In the Jurchen world, only strength matters, not where you come from." To Woo sneers, "I can't stand their damn hairstyles," and ends the man's life. As they count the dead, proof of their bounty, To Woo's gaze lingers over the corpses. He has long grown numb to the bloodshed. But when one of their own falls, another man's grief turns on the rookie. To Woo's younger brother, Gok-soo, watches as their wounded comrade suffers. To Woo tells him this is mercy on the battlefield. Under his brother's pressure, Gok-soo ends the man's life himself, tears streaming down his face.
지금 네가 죽인 놈은 바로 네 자신이야. 이제 잊어, 너란 놈은.
To Woo made him forget his own name, because in the fate of the Daeripgun, they are nothing more than cold, impersonal code numbers. When the officials arrive to distribute pay, they call roll from a ledger. The living step forward to claim their reward. A man named Nam Taedong is dead, but the official coldly tells his family they must either repay the money or send a replacement. To Woo snaps. He demands to know how they can treat the dead with such disrespect. The official sneers. On this roster, Nam Taedong is still alive. Until his term is served, his life or death means nothing. The words ignite a spark of fury in the men, who are treated as less than human. When the official's lackeys beat a protester, To Woo steps in, defiant. The official warns him, "Don't forget who feeds your family." In 1592, the enemy invades Joseon with an army of 200,000. King Seonjo flees the capital in panic, determined to beg for aid from Ming China. The ministers argued endlessly over the king's decision to abandon his people, but the king's mind was made up. He declares he would rather die on Ming soil. It is the only land befitting a king. To justify his plea for help, the king splits the court in two, establishing a secondary government. In haste, he names his 18-year-old son, Gwang-hae, a bastard child, long neglected, a crown prince, leaving him behind to lead the divided court and clean up the mess. Gwang-hae, weak and terrified, confesses to a palace maid that perhaps only poison can free him from this fate. The king hands Gwang-hae a royal edict, ordering him to Ganggi to rally troops and form a militia against the Japanese invaders. Before departing, the king coldly declares, "From this moment, you are the king of this nation," abandoning him to his fate. Gwang-hae is terrified and helpless. He knows he is not up to the task. The court ministers, who despise him, smirk with schadenfreude, hoping he will perish in the chaos. As Gwang-hae watches his father's vanishing figure and the weeping subjects kneeling in the dust, his world crumbles around him. He is shoved into a crude palanquin and sent on an uncertain journey to Ganggi. His escorts? To Woo and his band of Daeripgun, men whose service is nearly over. An official delivers their orders with a warning. If anything happens to the crown prince, they will all be executed on the spot. To Woo laid down his terms. They would fight for 1 month only, and then they had to go home to take care of their families. The official sneers, and tensions erupt. Tuwu stands firm, his eyes blazing. "We sell our lives," he declares, "but we are not slaves." A veteran court minister intervenes, offering a deal: become royal soldiers, even officers. The offer of redemption tempts the mercenaries. No longer fighting for others, they would fight for their own futures. And so, an unlikely company, a discarded prince and a band of outcasts, sets out on their journey. But danger lurks closer than they know. Elsewhere, enemy commanders learn of Guanghei's divided court and dispatch forces to capture him, eager to claim the prince as a prize. The column wound its way along the rugged mountain path. Guanghei sat in his sedan chair, immersed in a book, utterly indifferent to the world outside. The Daeripgun whisper scornfully among themselves, a pampered prince who needs attendants just to bathe, unfit to lead. Guanghei studies governance with his ministers, unaware that the real test ahead will be far crueler than any text. That night, Tuwu and his men gaze at the moon, longing for home and praying for the war's end. Suddenly, eerie will-o'-the-wisps flicker in the distance, a signal of attack. A volley of fire arrows rains down, turning the camp into an inferno. Panic erupts as men scatter. Tuwu directed everyone to protect the prince, but Guanghei was so terrified he clung to his book for dear life, refusing to let go. Tuwu forcibly dragged him away and roared, "Books can be replaced anytime. Your life only comes once." After the assault, the camp lies in ruins, the casualties severe. Tuwu examines the enemy arrows and realizes they don't match Japanese design. The attacker's identity is a mystery. Still shaken, Guanghei rages over his lost books, earning only Tuwu's contempt. For safety, Tuwu suggests taking a more treacherous mountain route. The most dangerous paths are often the safest. Guanghei accepted the advice, but the mountain path was treacherous. And that sedan chair, the very symbol of royal authority, had become a massive burden. The Daeripgun were suffering beyond endurance, yet the officials continued to lord it over them from the sidelines. Finally, Tuwu snapped. In full view of everyone, he kicked the sedan chair straight off the cliff. The officials shout in outrage, accusing him of treason. Just as the two sides stood locked in a tense standoff, Guanghei stepped forward. He chose to walk with everyone else on foot. For the first time in his life, the prince set aside his royal privilege and stood shoulder to shoulder with common people. Meanwhile, the enemy investigates the attackers, equally baffled by their identity. That day, the group was ambushed again. This time, the assault is fiercer, clearly targeting Guanghei's life. Amid the chaos, Tuwu saved Guanghei once again and taught him how to survive on the battlefield. He told Guanghei, "If you want to cut a man down, you have to look him in the eye first, and then strike without hesitation." Facing the subdued assassin, Guanghei raised his sword with trembling hands but couldn't bring himself to deliver the blow. In the end, Tuwu finished the assassin for him. Guanghei stood frozen, stunned by the bloody sight. While washing at the riverside, Guanghei opened his heart to Tuwu for the first time. Tuwu told him that courage only comes when you face your fear head-on. Guanghei gave a bitter smile and said he was still looking for that cliff he could put his back against. Tuwu admitted his own greatest fear was watching his brothers-in-arms die one by one right in front of him. Soon, the traitor within the group was exposed, one of the ministers closest to Guanghei. Under interrogation, the traitor revealed a devastating secret. Almost no one at court wanted Guanghei to succeed, not even his own father, the king. Guanghei was thunderstruck. He couldn't believe his father wanted him dead. The traitor kept twisting the knife. The king himself had been born a bastard and saw his own humiliating past reflected in Guanghei. He would never allow another illegitimate son to take the throne. Guanghei broke down completely. He screamed at the traitor to shut up, but Tuwu held him back. Tuwu insisted they had to hear the truth. Just as the traitor was about to name the mastermind, Guanghei put an arrow through his throat. He would rather live in a lie than face this brutal reality. The court's betrayal chilled the Daeripgun to the bone. Suspicion spread among them. Fights broke out. Even Goksu began to distance himself from Tawu, believing his brother had changed, become someone else, in his obsession to alter their fate. Tawu roared back, "Who here doesn't want to change his fate? Or do you want to die like a dog?" Another man lay dying from terrible wounds. He begged his comrades to leave him behind. They said goodbye through tears. Learning the truth left Guanghe utterly hopeless. He saw himself as nothing more than a puppet his father had tossed out as bait. An abandoned son. What meaning was there in living? If he died, everyone's suffering would end. Late that night, he walked alone to the cliff's edge to end his life, only to be pulled back by Tawu. Meanwhile, Goksu returned from burying their comrade. He told Tawu he had made up his mind. He was going to defect to the Japanese invaders. This country was rotten to the core, and anyone who made him suffer was his enemy. He drew his blade and pointed it at Guanghe, intending to offer the prince's head as proof of his loyalty. Tawu stepped in front of Guanghe. Goksu told him to move, or he'd kill them both. Guanghe closed his eyes. He no longer cared whether he lived or died. In a way, it was comforting to think he might die at the hands of his own people. But in the end, Goksu's blade never fell. He looked at his tormented brother, turned, and walked away. From that moment on, the bond between the brothers was shattered beyond repair. Having lived through all this, the column pressed on. They came across a group of refugees who had been brutalized by the enemy. At the sight of the starving refugees, Guanghe's guards moved to seize what little food they had left. Guanghe finally stepped forward and bellowed at his men to stop. For the first time, he spoke as crown prince and challenged his own retainers. "Isn't it our incompetence that let the enemy invade and turned these people into refugees? And now you want me to rob them of the last grains, keeping them alive?" With that, he gave his own rations to the refugees. In that moment, he was no longer the timid prince. That day, everyone sat together, sharing rare food and a moment of peace. Guanghe asked one of Towu's men to sing a song. The man replied he was too sober to sing. Guanghe handed over his own wine. The mood gradually warmed. To ease everyone's sorrow, Guanghe even got up and danced himself. In that moment, the barriers of class seemed to vanish. The relationship between Tawu and Guanghe changed subtly. They began talking like friends. But just as they neared Jiangjie, another ambush struck. The soldier carrying the royal banner took multiple arrows. With his dying breath, he pressed the blood-soaked flag into Towu's hands and begged him, "Protect his highness, no matter what." Tawu hoisted Guanghe onto his back, gripped the royal banner in one hand, and carved a bloody path through the enemy encirclement. In the end, they leapt off the cliff together and, against all odds, survived. When they finally staggered into Jiangjie after 1,000 hardships, all that greeted them was a burned-out, empty shell of a city. Every shred of hope collapsed. The military exam, the promised government posts, everything turned to ash. Worse still, the comrade Tawu had sent back to their village returned with devastating news. To stop the enemy advance, the king's army had torched every boat on the river. Refugees trying to cross were drowned by the hundreds. Among them was Goksu's mother. Hearing of his mother's death, Goksu shattered completely. He blamed the kingdom itself for killing her. At that moment, Guanghe's courtiers urged the prince to leave at once and report to the king. Tawu and his brothers had fulfilled their duty. It was time for them to go too. Guanghe stopped them. "My court broke its promise to you. You're free." He solemnly handed the royal banner back to Tawu. Tawu accepted it, turned, and led his brothers away. But on the road, Tawu spotted the main enemy force closing in fast. He knew Guanghe's party was doomed. After an agonizing inner struggle, he wheeled his horse around to ride back and warn them. His comrades didn't understand. They had already done far more than required. Why go back to certain death? Tawu answered. Maybe we can still save a future good king. Goksu, however, believed no king could ever change their fate. He refused to return. In the end, To Wu galloped back alone. After a moment's hesitation, his brothers followed. On the other side, Guanghe had just received new orders from the king. Abandon Jiangjie immediately and seek the Ming army. The courtiers sighed in relief and pressed him to leave at once, but To Wu's return upended everything. Learning the enemy was almost upon them, Guanghe resolved to help the refugees escape, even if he could not fight. The ministers protested furiously. This would cost him Ming recognition and his claim to the throne. To Wu proposed retreating to a nearby mountain fortress, easy to defend, backed by sheer cliffs. With To Wu's help, Guanghe led everyone to the stronghold. Soon, the enemy was at the gates. Goksu appeared at the front of their lines. He had truly defected to the Japanese and now came forward as a persuader, demanding the fortress surrender. The brutal siege began. The defenders fought back desperately with arrows and boulders, but the enemy's muskets were devastating. The line was crumbling. Guanghe himself took up a bow and fought shoulder to shoulder with the soldiers. As arrows ran out, Goksu appeared again, shouting for surrender.
왕세자를 당장 내보내시오. 그러면 외놈들이 즉시 이곳을 떠날까요?
The enemy began slaughtering captured civilians in full view, threatening to kill more until the prince was handed over. The refugees inside broke down. They fell to their knees, weeping and begging Guanghe to sacrifice himself to save them all. His heart tearing apart, Guanghe decided to walk out and trade his life for theirs. To Wu seized him and refused to let go. Surrender only means death. They will show no mercy. Tears streaming down his face, Guanghe said, "The thing I fear most is watching everyone die because of me." At that moment of utter despair, a figure crawled out of a tunnel. Another Daeripgun brother. He brought incredible news. More than 100 volunteers had gathered outside. They could strike from within and without and break the siege together. To Wu immediately drew up the breakout plan. He looked at Guanghe and asked, "Do you still want to be king?" Guanghe looked back and replied, "Do you want to be my people? Then tell me your real name." At dawn, the breakout began. They set fire to carts loaded with dry straw, creating chaos, and charged the gates. The crowd raced toward the river's only remaining boat. To Wu and the last of his brothers held the rear. To Wu faced his traitorous younger brother Goksu once more. Steel rang against steel. Seeing Guanghe safely aboard, To Wu knew his mission was complete. He flung the royal banner onto the boat with all his strength, then turned and plunged into the enemy ranks, fighting to his last breath. His remaining brothers followed him without hesitation, giving their lives in one final act of loyalty. From the boat, Guang He watched it all, tears pouring down his face as he clutched the blood-soaked banner. At last, Guang He reached the Ming general's camp. He raised the banner high and proclaimed to everyone within earshot, "Go tell your general, the king of this country has arrived." The soldiers dropped to their knees as one, shouting, "Long live the king!" In blood and fire, a true king was born. Do you know why the royal banner carries two dragons? One is the sovereign, the other is the people.